Morning, we're learning as chus for Shlema for Ilana Chaya Basarach and Meir ben Cyril Perel. We're at the Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, second Mishnah on the block. Harele Oila Yavi Kevis. Someone says, I'm going to bring an Oila. He brings a Kevis, which is this. He just said an Oila. He didn't say what. So you bring the smallest thing that fits the bill. So kevis is a lamb. It's sufficient. Elizabeth Azariah says he could bring a eilis of a tur or a ben yain. We'll explain that it's not really a machlekes. Depends on the situation. Pirashti min habaka. Now we're talking about the first one was he said, I'm bringing an eilah, but he knows that he didn't say anything specific. So in that case, we say he can bring the minimum. But now we're talking about a case where he did say something, he just doesn't remember it. Pirashti bin habaka ve'eni yedea ma pirashti. I said, I'm going to bring an eilah from bakar. Bakar is some kind of, I don't know how to say it, cow. Cow means female, but it means
Cattle.
Cow, everything, ox is included in cow, right? A bull is a kind of cow.
I guess it's a cattle.
Cattle. Right, cattle's the right word. Rashi ben Abakar, he said, I'm bringing from cattle. But I don't remember which one I said. So an oila is only brought from zachar. It's only brought from a male. So yavi par ve'egel minama behem. He has to bring, yavi par ve'egel. He has to bring both a older bull and an egel, a young, a male calf, because he said an oila. He said he'd bring an oila, and he says an oila from cattle. So those are the two choices. It has to be a male or young, older or younger cattle. Minahabehema, he said a more general phrase. He didn't say from cattle. He said from the animals. Yavi parve egel. He has to bring both the parve egel, because maybe he was talking about cattle. Ayel soir. He has to bring an older, a ram, which is a male, older sheep, and soir, an older goat. Gediyutla, and a male lamb and a male kid, male goat, a baby goat. Well, he has to cover all the possible bases. Pirashti ve'eni yedea ma pirashti. He didn't even say a behema, which means a large animal. He just said, I'm bringing an oila, mice of a land tara ben yaina. Then he has to bring as well a bird, and a ben yaina, because we don't have any idea what kind of oila he meant. So he brings all the different kinds of oilas. Harei alai toida ushlamim. Said rather than bring an oila, he's bringing a toida and a shlamim. So toida and shlamim are not restricted to just zachar. That could be nekeva, it could be from a female else as well. So yavi keves. So now again we're talking about where he didn't, at the time that he said harei alai toida, he didn't specify anything. He just said stam. So in the case of stam, he can bring the minimum, which is a keves, which can be either male or female, but it means a young sheep, which is the cheapest of the options. Pirashti min habakar, pirashti. But if he had specified something and he doesn't remember what he said, yavi par upara egel va'agala. He has to bring both male and female cattle, and both young and old, because there's nothing restricting a taida or a shlamim from being brought from young or old. Bila behema. If he specified animal, a larger animal, meaning as opposed to a bird, yavi paru para egel vagala ayel or chela sar vasira. Has to bring all four possibilities. He has to bring both cattle and sheep and goats, both old and young, and as well as male and female. I guess I stopped a minute. Yavi paru para egel va'agala, both a bull and a cow, egel va'agala, a male calf and a female calf, ayel or a chela, a ram and a ewe. It means a male goat, older goat, and a male, and a female um, sheep. I'm sorry, ayel is a male sheep, a ram. Rechela is a ewe, which is a female grown sheep. Soyer v'seira, which is a male and female grown goat. Gediyu gedia, a kid, which is a baby goat and a baby female goat. Tleotlia, the same thing for the sheep, lambs. So you got a lot of possibilities. They asked the couple. Hare alai shor. We said, I'm bringing a shor. Yavihu unechasev b'mana. Someone said this, and now we're going back to general rules. If someone says, I'm going to bring a shor, and he didn't say how much it should be worth, he should bring one that's worth, together with an asachim of a mana, 100. I think it's 100 shkala. Egel yavihu nechasev b'chamesh. He should bring with it 5 slaim, which is I think 20 dinrin. Right? That was the shor was worth 100 dinrin. This is only 20 dinrin. Ayel yavihu nechasev b'shtayim. That's even cheaper. He said a ram, that's generally cheaper than an egel, than a calf. So he brings the worth total of 2 sela, which I think is 8 dinner. Kavis yavihu nechasav b'sela, it's just one single sela, 4 dinner. That's telling you the value that's implicit when someone says these animals, this is the amount that we assume it was meant to be. Shar b'mana, if he said, I'm bringing a shar for a mana, yavi b'mana chutz min nechasav. Then in that case, in the first case where he said just stam shar, so we say it's 100 dinrim. So then the nesachim are included with it. But if he said, I'm bringing a shar for 100 mana, so that means the shar itself is 100 mana, and he has to pay on top of it for the nesachim in addition to the 100 mana. Egel b'chamish yavu chamish chutzim nechasav. The same thing with the egel. Ayel b'shtayim yavu b'shtayim chutzim nechasav. Kavaz esel yavu b'sel chutzim nesachav. Not sure why the Mishnah had to repeat all this. It seems to be implied in the first din. Shar b'mana v'hevi shnayim. Shar b'mana. He said a shar for a mana. V'hevi shnayim b'mana, and he brought 2 shar shvarim for a mana instead of 1. Lo yatsa. He wasn't yatsa. As we're going to see, this is the Tana Kama says you can't replace what you said you were going to bring. Even if the first one was, he brought 2, and they were almost the money. Each one of them was 99 dinrim, just missing 1. So it's a total of 198 dinrim he's spending instead of 100 for a single one. Since each one is less than what he had promised, so what he had been menadif, so he's not yotze. He has to bring up for 100. Dinar shacha v'hevi lav. And if he said, I'm going to bring for a dinar a black and I did white, I'm sorry, shachar v'hevi lavan, lavan v'hevi shachar. If he said, I'm going to bring a black animal, he brought a white one, he brought a black one, and each of these have different milas. I think a white one is better for plowing, and the black one, the skin is more valuable. Gadol v'hevi katan. He said, I'm going to bring a large one, he brought a small one, lo yatsa. Anything that's less than what he had promised to bring, he's not yatsa. Katan v'hevi gadol yatsa. But if he brought something smaller, promised to bring a small animal, and he said, I'm going to bring a 2-foot high calf, and he brought instead a 3-foot high calf, he's yatsa. If he increased, like we said, the more the better. So you're only increasing what you promised to bring. Rebbe says no, any change, even if it's better than what you had originally promised, you're not yet. Zaknumar, loy pligi. That's talking about the first din in the Mishnah. We said, if someone said, Harei alai oila, he should bring a keves, he should bring the cheapest or the least prestigious oila. Elizabeth Azariah said, which is a lamb. Elizabeth Azariah said you could even bring a bird. And Zok the Gemara, they're not arguing. Marki Asrei or Marki Asrei happens to be in one place that the birds were more expensive than a lamb. So Torah Bnei Yaina, It's more expensive. I think it's Rashi's pshat. So Rashi maki ase, but ase tanakama gria keves me oif. Vasa belaza gria oif me keves. I think um other try to bring different pshatim because it's not so likely. So it's a question of what a person, what other man, the other Rishonim. So you're skeptical. Look, other Rishonim say it's talking about a place when someone says an oilah, he normally means an oif or b'nei yaina. So that was the machlokes. Now the one said the least the person means is a keves. They don't mean anything less than that. Oilah means an animal, not a bird, unless it's special circumstances. Tana Rabban. Harele oilah besela lemizbeach. I'm bringing an oilah for a sela on the mizbeach. Yavi keves. You should bring a keves. She'en l'chadav shekarav besela gam mizbeach ala keves. Shekarav besela. I think they take out these words. Shekarav besela. It's a little bit repetitive. But that's the amount. If you say I'm bringing an oilah for a sela, the thing that's brought normally for a sela is a keves, like we saw in the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that, right? That stam keves is brought for worth one sel. Pirashti v'nedei ma pirashti. If he said I said something and I don't remember what I said, yavi mikol davar shekar b'sel l'gabi mizbech. In that case, he has to bring anything. It's not necessarily the animal. It could be a mincha. It could be let's say shemen. Whatever could be bought for a seller. That's what he brings. We don't just assume that it was the keves, which is the standard carbon. Anything that could be bought for a seller, he has to bring because he might have said that. Pirashti min habakav enidem pirashti yavi parveg. We said in the Mishnah, someone said I said from the cattle, but I don't know what I said. He has to bring a parva egel. We're talking about still the oil, which is only a zach. Look at my mai velesi par mimanov shach. Why does he have to bring a parva egel? If he said I said I'm going to bring a par. I said I'm going to bring some cattle. Why does he have to bring a grown cow, a grown bull actually, and a male calf? Let him just bring the bull. Obviously, from the fact that he can't just bring the older, bigger, more expensive animal, right? Says if you bring a gadol, let's say he had said a calf and he brought a gadol, he wasn't yaitza, like Rebbe said at the end of the Mishnah. So Rebbe lo yatza. If he said a shar b'mana and he brought two for a mana, he's not yaitza. Afilu zeh b'mana chasadina v'zeh b'mana chasadina shchar v'hevi lavan v'hevi shchar gadol v'hevi kadon lo yatza v'hevi gadol yatza Rebbe Yemel lo yatza. So we brought this machlokes. The Gemara is asking. We brought this machlokes later on in the Mishnah. You're saying the beginning of the Mishnah, where we said that he has to bring both a par ve'egel, is because we hold that you're not yaitza by bringing a par where he had promised an egel. But then later on, the Mishnah has this machlokes. The Tanakama says it would be good. Katan ve'hevi gadol is yatza, and Rebbe says you're not yaitza. So Reisha would say for Rebbe mitziyasa rabbanon. Doesn't make sense that we start with Rebbe, then we say the Shita of the Rabban, then we go back and say Rebbe's Chayil. So Gemara in Reisha we say Rebbe Mitzvah Rabban of Hachikam. Davazeh Machlokes Rebbe of Rabban. After we said the beginning of the Mishnah, at the end of the Mishnah we say, by the way, what we had mentioned before, the Shita of Rebbe is really a Machlokes. Tanan Hasa Shishal and Nadav. I'm going to get back to this Machlokes of Rebbe of Rabban, whether you yaitza or bring a larger animal where you had promised the smaller one. So we said in a Mishnah in Shkolim, way back, we learned it about 4 or 5 years ago, back in Mayid, we learned Shkolim, very hard Masechta, very hard to follow. But there were 6, there were really 13, but there were 6 shofars, which were the community chests, where they would put monies for different reasons. There were 6 of them that were made for Nadava, that they would take money from that to bring Nadavis Nidvas Oila L'Kayetz HaMizbeach. When the Mizbeach was slow, they would take money from these to use for the Nadav. Zaktamar Keneged Mi. What were these? Why do they have 6 for Nadava, 6 chests to hold the money for Nadavas? Amar Chizki Keneged Shisha Batei Avis HaKayanim. Because there were 6 groups of Kayanim. Each Mishma was divided into 6 6 groups, and they would do each day of the week. I think, and Shabbos, I think, was a different cheshbon. The problem was that the Kohanim were always fighting. They were a rambunctious lot, and they would always be fatainet. That they would say, "How come you came on a day that there were more skins that were available, and I got the day that there were not so many karbanis, and I didn't get so many skins?" So they would use these nadavas to even it out, to make sure that the Kohanim, nobody had any tinus. So by putting each day they would put in for the different batayavas and use those nadavas to produce basar and hides for the Kohanim, so they wouldn't fight. Rashi has a long explanation of this. Yechon said, no, much simpler reason. There was a lot of money that was left over that would be put into these containers, into these chests, and they would get overcrowded. If you crowd in too much money, it would get corroded. Uziri Yama, it didn't have like our type of cash, or I guess the money would I don't know, kesef or copper. I guess if it gets too crowded, it doesn't get enough oxygen, it rusts.
I think the nature of things changed.
Yeah, it's not something you would think that money over a year.
Yeah, they replenished it every year. Lots of sachets.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, the money, the minting, the money was not, its value didn't come from its status as currency. Oh. It came from its weight. The currency just attested to the weight.
Intrinsic value.
Right. So I guess they were more sensitive to something corroding or something. You have a like to us, when you see a rusty quarter, what difference does it make? It still works exactly the same. Then if they have 1,000 prutas that all rusted, they could weigh maybe a tenth less. I guess it's more possible, And also, we're used to very, very sophisticated alloys that are very permanent. Mm-hmm. Very possibly, pure copper, pure silver. Silver tarnishes in a minute. I don't know what that does to the weight. You wouldn't think it changes the weight.
Yeah.
I guess if there's not oxygen, who knows? Yeah. The Ziriyama connected parva egal ayel the keves gdi useir. He said, whoever was being menad of any of these different animals would put in money, and then they would take out, the Kohanim would use the money to buy the animals, or the Gizbar had animals on hand, so they were basically paying for their carbon, which is problematic because we know that many karbanos you have to do smicha on. So how could you just have a general rule? I guess to me it sounds like the Israelim will put their money in whichever animal they were paying for, and then the Kohanim would take, let's say, some of the money and assign it to an animal, then call over the Yisrael to go do his avoid. So tomorrow Rebbe the Amar Katan Vehevi Gadol Yotza. This is the Iri who said you bring a parva egel, you have to do a old adult ox and a younger, a calf. Why can't he just bring a par? Why do you have to have an egel? You could always be yaitza an egel by doing something bigger. So he doesn't have to. They don't really need to be differentiated. So Vai says he holds like Rebbe who says you cannot use something larger when you promise to bring something small. That's the third shot. So the Rashi goes through what all of these things mean. These are all things that are extra. So Rashi in the bottom says, "Keneged parim shechatois tzibur she'avdu." Chatas tzibur that got lost. Vivish acherim tachteim, and he separated something else in its place. If you have a chatas of a yachid, then if it's left over, it's mesa she'avdu bala. But by a chatas tzibur, The din is it's royachi, it's ad niskularia, it gets sent to put out the pasture, and then when you sell it, the money goes l'kayat hamizbeach. And Elam, Rashi explains the Ashram jails for Ashram Eilas in the same situation where you had lost it and then you set aside a second one. Va'akfasim, as Rashi says, for Ashram Najiv, Ashram Matzayra, which have different dinim than the standard Ashamis of Ashram Gazelis, where someone stole or he denied money, or Ashram Eilas, where someone was benefited from Kachim. V'hamaisrus, Moses is Rashi says. Yeah. Wait, we said Vasiirim was the Moses and Rashi. Moses could go Misha Makav Echad Mikol Elu Hivish Mois L'Shem Kach V'Huzlu Behemes V'Yistarsu HaMois Noisin L'Shever Chamishi. He's saying the fifth one is if someone said he gave $100 to buy let's say a bull, and of one of these chatois tzibur, and then the price went down to 90, so there were $10 left over, so that goes into this fifth shofar. The last one is the ma'ah, is the small amount. Rashi explains that everyone, when they gave a machzis a shekel, had to add on a little bit extra in order to make sure that he gave the full machzis shekel. Is chiv deraisa. So if two people joined in and they gave a full shekel, so that ma'ah went in together with the machzis shekel that was in the other 7 boxes, shofars. But the ma'ah is when two people join together, so therefore they didn't have to really add on so much, because just for a shekel you also had to do just one ma'ah. But they would do a second ma'ah, a second amount, second kalbain actually, that was a very small amount, because since they were doing it together, the shekel was losing that extra small piece that they would have given extra, so they give that into the sheif. So now the Gemara goes through. We said a bunch of 3 different pshatim or 4 different pshatim. Now we can explain why each one didn't say like the other. We said, Chizkiah said that the reason you have the shofar to separate every day the kehanim, that they should have a resource to be able to even out the amount of karbanis that everyone was getting, that the kehanim were getting the iris from. And we said they did that in order to avoid machlokes by the kehanim. He said the kehanim were not so bad as everyone said; they could figure it out to get along. Everyone has their own day to work, and they understand it. If they're going to get, if they get more, they get more. If they get less, they get less. They're not going to fight. Like you said, we're not chayish that the money is going to rust, so therefore there's no need to make extra shofars just to hold the extra money. Because Ziri had said that you had 6 to hold the younger and older paros and the cattle and the sheep and the goats. But we said that the reason why you need 6 is for the older and the younger. We said that's not like Rebbe, who says you can bring a larger one, and that will also be it's a smaller one, so you really only need 3. He says ki yichida mukma. They don't hold like Rebbe, who's a yichida. Kabapada nami le'amre. Kabapada is the 4th pshat. We said for all these different maestros of kabbanis tzibur. Maestros kulanami maestros. He said one of the things he said was for maestros, someone who was makriv and he had extra money because he had donated more than was needed to buy the carbon. He said it's no difference between something that was lost and then you got another one you had left over. These are all maestros, so there's no reason to have a separate one just for that maestro. So his pshat doesn't make sense. And secondly, another pshat, we said that when 2 people donated together their machzis shekel, then there was sort of cheating. They were only going to give half as much extra as they normally would, because each one of them would have had to give extra. So he said that little extra that they give at that point to make up for that, that goes into the shofar. They say, no, that also goes to the shkolim. Just like the little bit extra you always give, you give a little more than a machzis shekel, it goes into the shkolim. This extra But when they did it as a pair, also goes to shkalim. So there's no need for an extra shayfer. There's already a shayfer for shkalim. The Tanya lahechen kalben zahaylach l'shkalim divrei Meir. Meir says it goes to the shkalim. This extra kalben for the pairs, for the people that did it as a partnership, and Stam Mishnah is like Rameya, so we're not chaylak on Rameya. So you see that it goes to shkalim, not like Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, so that was the first 4 pshat. Now we're going to say 2 more pshat. In the Mishnah over there. So the reason why we just brought this is because Rebbe's machlokes with the Tanakama about whether you could be Yaitza, someone who pledged a small amount of Yaitza with a Gadol. That's Rebbe's machlokes. So looking at, so we're going back to another pshat in this Tnan Hasam Shishul and Nadava, that there were 6 collection boxes for money that went in Nidvis Tzibur, the Eilis Lekayetz HaMizbeach. Another few pshat. The general rule is that this all comes from a pasuk that says, we know that these things are only from Chatayis and Hashams. Those are the only ones. Comes from I think it's in Shkalim or in Babas. I don't remember exactly where. But we give the source for this extra, the Maestris going to Nadava, and it only applies to Chatas and Asham. So Shmuel Amakanegin Moiser Chatas or Moiser Asham, or standard Chatas where it got lost and you bought another one, so you have a leftover. Or Moiser Asham and Asham the same thing. Umaiser and Asham Stam Asham is Asham Gzelis, where he denied something that he stole, and Asham Meila, where he benefited from Kachum. Umaiser Asham Nod, so that's 2. So we have Chatas and Maiser Asham. Maiser Asham Nazir, Maiser Asham Nazir, which has its own dinim. It's different, distinct from that of a standard Asham. Maiser Asham Mitzaira. There's also Asham Mitzaira, which also has its own dinim. Moisa minchas chayta, the extra mincha of a chayta, that means if someone, that was the carbon oil of a yared, there was a type of chatas that he would give a mincha for. If he had leftover money from that, we had lost it and then had to dedicate another one that found it. Moisa asirus ha'efer shel kohen gadol. Into the leftover from Asirus ha'efer shel kohen gadol, the chavitin that he brought twice a day, he divided into half, the one isaron, that was put into the 6th shayfer. That was Shmuel's shot. Rav Aishia Amar Keneged Moisa Chatas and Moisa Asham, so far the same as Shmuel. Moisa Asham Nazar, Moisa Asham Netzayra, again still the same. The first 4 the same as Shmuel. Moisa Kinan. Moisa Minchas Chayta. So his 6th is the same as Shmuel's 5th. The Moisa Minchas Chayta is the same, but he switches, instead of Chavite Kohen Gadol, he puts in Moisa Kinan, the pair of birds that Yishai Aladis would bring. Was that what it was? I'm sorry, was it? I'm not sure if it was. Umayse minchas chayte, umayse sefer. Chad lekinen, mechusik kapara, maybe mois lekina, v'noisem b'shayfer. So it's mechusik kapara. This is Vaychel b'kachan l'Arabic. The kaimel ein bezin shel kehanim ein mishamachi yichlu kol ha'mosh. Yeah, so this is for a pair of birds that the person brought as a chatas, that he has to, the meister has to go into this shape. Why did he say minchas chavite kohen gadol? Why say chavite kohen gadol as opposed to kinin? Kinin tanale reisha. If you look back at the Mishnah, which we don't have here, but in the list that it said before it got to these 6, there were 7 before, and one of those things were for birds. Rav Aishia tani v'loy tani kinin. Rav Aishia took out kinin from the first list. But tani Rav Aishia v'tani kinin. We have that Rav Aishia did include kinin in the list. So even though in the beginning we had listed that it was 1 shayfer for the birds, that was for the actual birds. When a woman would come, she would put the money into the shayfer, and then they would go, the Kohanim would go and use that money to take a bird, or they would just take a bird directly using that money. But this is talking about where a person had bought birds and lost them, and then the extra money was going into the shayfer. Hiroshi, my time Shmuel. Why didn't he say Chavite Kohen Gadol? So the commander Amar Moshe shall asir se'efer shel Kohen Gadol yirkov. He holds that it doesn't go in the dava. It's not used to buy oil l'kayetz hamizbeach. Rather, it would be left to rot. The Tanya. Moshe minchas nedava. Moshe mincha nedava. What's left over from a minchas? It's a little. This price is very unclear. It just says minchas of something. It doesn't say what. It's in the dava. Moshe mincha yirkov. But the leftover of a mincha is yirkov. My kamar. Does it mean Avrachaz or kamar? Moiser minchas chayta nedava. Moiser of a minchas chayta that goes to nedava. Moiser asirus ha'efa shall kohen gadol yirkov. The second thing that we said, moiser mincha, that's talking about the asirus ha'efa that gets left out to rat. So according to this, that if you hold like that, that would explain why he didn't want to say. Why didn't want to say like Shmuel that we're there was a shayfer for the moiser of a efa shall asirus ha'efa shall kohen gadol, since that wasn't didn't go to Nadav. Rabba Amar Afilu Moiser Asir Sefer Shel Kohen Gadol Nami Nadav. He disagrees. He says no. Even the Moiser Sefer, according to Rav Shia, is also a Nadav. So why didn't they make an extra shayfa? Ella Moiser Lachmei Toida. He says that Moiser Sefer Shel Kohen Gadol is Nami Nadav. And what does it mean, Moiser? What are we saying in the Brisa when we say something goes to be Yerkov? A mincha is Yerkov. Moiser lachmi toida Yerkov. It's talking about lachmi toida, not the asir seif of kohen gadol, but plukta, which is this is a machlekes that we've had in another. This machlekes is brought in an additional place. Moiser asir seif.
What's Rabbi saying? Rabbi is arguing on who then? He's not another sheep.
He's just explaining
that last part.
He's just explaining the brisa. Because it's gonna end up being reflected in machlekes Rabbi Shia and Shmuel. So the way you're gonna learn that brisa, if you're gonna say that asirus ha'efa shel kohen gadol is in a dava, then you're gonna have to. Then you'll say like Shmuel that there was a shayv for it. It's all gonna line up at the end. We'll put the moisa asirus ha'efa shel kohen gadol Rabbi Yechonam in a dava, Rabbi Elazar Amar Yirkov Meisvei moiser shkolim. Chulin. We have a kasha on this. It says Moiser Shkolim. What's left over from the Shkolim is Chulin. It means if someone said, "I'm bringing my machzas a shekel," and he takes a bundle of coins, it turns out instead of being a half a shekel, it was a full shekel. So what's left over is not considered to be a shekel. He never meant to give more than a machzas a shekel. Moiser asirus ha'efa, Moiser kinei zavin, v'kinei zavis, v'kinei leyales, v'chatois v'ashamais. Misrei and Nadava. They're all a Nadava. So we're saying Meiser Asir Sefer, and we say Meiser Kinei Zavin. This is going to be a problem, right? Because we're saying one man Amma said the Shefer is for the Kinei Zavin. The other one said it's for Asir Sefer of the Kohen Gadol. But now we're saying they're both Nadava. Our whole explanation of why he said Kinei is because he holds Asir Sefer is not a Nadava. Ma'alav Moiser Asir Sefer Shel Kohen Gadol. Didn't say what the Asir Sefer was, just says Moiser Asir Sefer. L'chari, that means that of the Kohen Gadol. Loi Moiser Minchas Chayta. It's not talking about that. It's talking about the Moiser of the Minchas Chayta. That what goes to Nadava, and that we already said that there's going to be a Shefer. Amar Nachbar Yitzchak. Mistaber Command Amar Moiser Asir Sefer Shel Kohen Gadol Yirka. It's more likely the Command Amar that says the Asir Sefer is not in Nadava. Meaning like Rav Oshia and not like Shmuel. The Tanya L'Yosam L'Hashem and L'Ita L'Elavayna. It says that the minchas chayta is called a chatas, but not other thing is not something else is not called a chatas. That the sirus of the kohen gadol is not called a chatas, and it needs levina. And if that's the case, with the kriya chatas, moisra yirka, like we said at the beginning, this din that the moisra gold in the dava is limited to a chatas tzibur, right? The chatas of a yachid is mesa, but a chatas of a tzibur, it goes on the dava, and to hashamis, but anything outside of that, it's not considered a chatas, then it's not included in this din that it should moisers go on the dava, so therefore it's moisers here. Okay, we'll stop over here. Not going to try to rush through this. Since we're officially on track, even though that these last few blocks, the size of them look a bit daunting.